So Conan Exiles has a brand new building set, the Vanir Cabin, with insane environmental flexibility, but also some strange choices from the dev team. Is the Vanir Cabin set worth your hard-earned money? Today we're going to find out. Firstly, a disclaimer: this set was gifted to me by Funcom. Just like all my other reviews, that will in no way affect my opinions of this set, nor will it affect my recommendation or lack thereof. So without further ado, let's get started. The Vanir Cabin set comes in at 1200 Crom coins, or exactly $10, the standard price for single bundle building sets. The bundle contains 46 pieces across 10 categories. Those are cabin floors and stairs, snowy cabin floors and stairs, snowy walls, snowy rooftops, cabin walls, snowy sloped roofs, cabin sloped roofs, cabin rooftops, snowy windows, doors and pillars, and cabin windows, doors and pillars. So this set has two core variants, those being the regular cabin and the snowy cabin. The pieces are very grounded in earthen tones, being overwhelmingly made of a slightly darker wooden plank and a sort of weaved branch interior. The grass roofs and foundations add a nice punch of green without too much saturation, whereas the snowy pieces add a white layer atop the base pieces and the roofs. Foundations and ceilings are also covered in a thick layer of snow, which is good for building in the frozen north. Stylistically, all of these pieces are very similar across the board, which is great for overall cohesion, but can end up leading to a very muddy visual profile if not handled correctly. On the technical side of things, there are a few things worth noting. Firstly, this set does not have any wedge pieces, nor does it have roof wedges or inverted sloping sides. It also doesn't include fence foundations, fences, or pillars. It does include quarter pillars and vaulted ceilings in plain and snowy, which is a good addition. The awnings are also a bit unusual here. They're not like regular awnings in that they're intended to create covered walkways, but are instead intended to create A-frame roofs. For its intention, it's effective, but there's no standard awnings included in this set, which will be a letdown for some. Last detail, some of the foundations here are a bit strange. The hearth and snowy hearth foundations are short foundations, meaning there's an inherent height difference compared to the regular ones. This is fine, but it is slightly too high to smoothly walk over, and as far as I can tell, you can't smooth this out with stairs or stage steps, meaning you'll have to do a little jump to get over the edge of a full height foundation. It's not a groundbreaking issue, it's just a bit of a strange decision that adds a level of clunk to these pieces. You also can't place walls onto the hearth foundations, which is another downside. Now, in terms of actually getting hands-on and building with the Vanir Cabin set, it's pretty straightforward. There are a few strange quirks, like having to place walls before adjacent awnings, or quarter pillars not being able to be placed against doorways or against roof pieces, but generally it's like 95% common sense placement. That being said, there is a glaring feeling of missing something from some of the pieces that have been left out of the bundle. Inverted sloping sides are sorely missed for easier transitions between shapes, and I'd kill for some good fences, but this set doesn't have any. The quarter pillars are again a bit finicky and very understated, and the vaulted ceilings honestly don't really work all that well indoors. Sure, they look pretty good on the exterior, but they're almost too easy to overlook when they're on the inside of a build, which keeps everything looking fairly flat overall, unfortunately. Building with just this set alone isn't overly difficult, but it's not exactly the easiest experience in the world. However, you can augment the Vanir Cabin set with some other build sets too. Aesir is a decent option, not my absolute favourite just yet, but it does cover some of Vanir Cabin's weaknesses and augments it with a bit more shape and structure to prevent flatness. Zingaran Pergola is a nice combo for smaller scale cabins too, especially those in the highlands and other grassland areas. Numidian and Cabin also works quite well and scales better than the Zingaran Pergola combo does. And lastly, Frontier and Cabin works quite well actually, especially if you use Snowy Cabin. The contrast just makes for a really nice combination. All in all, the building experience is decent, but not the best. There's a couple of pieces that are very obvious in their omission, and that does make it harder to build as you would with almost any other set, though there are ample combinations to fill those holes. So now we know all of the details, do I recommend the Vanir Cabin build set? Well, it's a bit complicated. Purely based on aesthetics, Vanir Cabin is quite nice. It's no Argosian Observatory or Yamatai Towers, but for what it's trying to be, it visually achieves that quite well. Pretty much your only other options for a cabin are insulated wood, which isn't that great, and acacia, which I personally find a little too clean and a little too light in tonality overall. In terms of usability, Vanir Cabin is not perfect. In fact, it does sometimes feel slightly less usable than a standard set that just includes the regular pieces. There's clearly a vision behind what Funcom thought players would want to build with this set, but as has been an issue in the past, I think that vision is perhaps a little too restrictive, and thus they've left out the pieces that didn't really fit the vision, but would have been very useful to have. For me and my building style, it feels almost necessary to mix Vanir Cabin with other sets. I will say, mixing sets is a very important part of good architecture, but I do also want a build set to be able to stand on its own. Vanir Cabin can do that, but it isn't as great as others that have come before it. I also think that to get the most out of this set, you'll probably need to be a decently experienced builder to overcome its inherent downsides. Less experienced builders might end up just building the same muddy cubes over and over again, and thus won't get the most out of this set. On PC, Vanir Cabin is also directly competing with the Northern Timber mod, which takes this style down a slightly different, though very well done avenue. All that considered, I don't think Vanir Cabin is bad per se. It's not as bad as sets like Terranian Extension or Lost Dungeon have been at times, and when it works really nicely. However, it's just not as user-friendly as it could be, and it is certainly missing some key items. Overall, do I recommend the Vanir Cabin set? For less experienced builders, no. I think there's too many difficulties to worry about to make this set a must-have for beginners, especially given that it's missing pieces that almost every other build set will have. For experienced builders, I'd give it a cautious recommendation. This set is good if you know how to use it and can overcome its downfalls, especially when you mix it with other sets. It does end up quite nice. The biome flexibility is insanely high with the piece variants, and I think it could make some really cozy, homely builds that a lot of other sets would struggle with. I also think there's a lot of potential to use these very simple wooden walls for various different projects across various different styles, and it could fit in seamlessly. That being said, Steam players do have access to the Northern Timber mod, so if they choose to leave this set behind in favour of the mod, I can't say I blame them. Console players will likely find this a bit more attractive due to the lack of mods on that platform, of course. Overall, a decent set, not as good as recent offerings like Yamatai Towers and Argosian Observatory, but decent. It is missing some key pieces which makes life a bit harder, but when it works, Vanir Cabin does achieve its intended style in a pretty pleasing and convincing way. Anyway, that will wrap us up for today. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't think Vanir Cabin is bad, it's just not as good as it could have been. Leaving out some very important pieces wasn't a good decision in my view, but I think experienced builders can make it work to a high degree of success. Thank you for watching, and a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Do check out the Patreon page through the link in the description. There's early access to videos, wallpapers, build blueprints, video credits and much more, and joining us helps out the channel massively. Take care, and I'll see you soon.